If you want to get overpowered gear in Minecraft, then we all know villager trading is the easiest way to get it. But villagers sell a whole lot of things, which is why in this Minecraft guide, we're gonna go over all different villager types, and for each one, I will show you the most OP trades that will turn you into a literal god in no time. So you know what to focus on. Let's jump right into it. Let's go over it alphabetically, starting out with the Armorer. In case your village doesn't have an armorer already, then you can get one by placing down a blast furnace that will then turn an unemployed villager into an armorer. And when it comes to the trades, there's a lot of great stuff on offer. Of course, and I think most of us know this, once you get to the expert or master levels with the armorer, you can buy an entire set of not only diamond armor, but actually enchanted diamond armor from them. This is very darn cool because it means you can get armor without having to spend a single diamond. Very important because later in the game, if you want to duplicate armor trims or the netherite upgrade materials, then that costs quite a lot of diamonds, so it's very cool if you don't have to spend them on getting the armor. Now, when it comes to the enchantments, which types of enchantments are on the diamond armor is relatively random, but usually they're not going to be all that overpowered, right? Don't expect a perfect set with protection 4, unbreaking 3 and all that good stuff, but still, there are a couple of nice things that you can do here. On the one hand, if the enchantments are bad on the armor piece, you can always just go over to the grindstone, grind them off, and get a couple of levels for it. You can then just take the unenchanted armor and put something on it yourself. Alternatively, if the enchantments on the armor are good but not full level, then what you can do is just upgrade the level of the enchantments. Let's say, for example, you have an armor piece with Unbreaking 2 on it, but you want it to be Unbreaking 3. All you gotta do is put the Unbreaking 2 piece with an Unbreaking 2 book on an anvil, and that will turn it into an Unbreaking 3 enchantment. Very comfortable because you don't need to have the higher level books for it. And lastly, but this is something that is only really worth it in the end game when you have a lot of time and resources, you could of course get a bunch of different armorers, level them all up to the master perk until you get one with the perfect enchantments for your armor. It's gonna take a lot of time, so it's not really viable in the early game. So much for the enchanted diamond armor, but there's actually much more that you can get out of the armorer. For example, the armorer is the easiest way to get chainmail armor in Minecraft. And while it is not all that strong, it's still pretty cool to have, especially because the only other way to get it is as drop from monsters, and then it is usually very damaged, so you have to repair it and all, meaning it is so much more convenient to get it from the armorer. However, you can't only buy from the armorer, he's also one of the best sources of getting emeralds for yourself because he offers a trade where you can sell 4 iron ingots for 1 emerald. Especially if we think about how easy it is to mine iron and how much iron you're gonna get once you have an iron farm going, this is basically your infinite emerald cheat code. So overall, armorers are very good villager types, and I would recommend even getting a couple of them. And as always, if you could leave a quick like for the video, that'd be super duper nice because it helps me big time with the YouTube algorithm, especially on smaller channels like mine. So cheers so much for your support. Up next, we have the Butcher. If you don't have one, just put down a smoker and that will turn an unemployed villager into a butcher. Now, when it comes to the Butcher, unfortunately I don't think he's all that amazing, especially if we take a look at what you can actually buy from him. The only things that this man sells is rabbit stew, cooked chicken, and cooked pork chop. All stuff that you either don't really need or that you can easily get yourself, not worth buying. However, on the other side, when it comes to making money off of him, it's not all that bad because you can sell him a bunch of raw meat, raw chicken, raw rabbit, raw pork chop, and given the fact that usually in our survival worlds, we get some type of animal farm going relatively early, that means we mostly have access to a lot of raw meat, and in that sense, the Butcher is pretty okay to make a decent amount of money. But which villager traits are your favorites? Let us know in the comments down below. Now, the next villager type is very interesting, and I think a lot of people overlook him. That would be the Cartographer. In order to get one, you gotta put down a cartography table, and there are quite some things that you wanna know here. First off, the Cartographer is pretty good for making money, because at base level already, you can sell paper to him to get emeralds. Paper, of course, being very easy to come by, because all you need for it is sugarcane, and sugarcane is one of the easiest farms also to fully automate, meaning it's a great way to make emeralds. However, the main reason why the Cartographer is so cool is because he sells multiple types of maps that will help you find rare structures in your surrounding. For example, from a Cartographer, you can buy the Woodland Explorer map that will lead you to a woodland mansion. Given that these mansions are pretty rare, that is a valuable item to have, and on top of that, there are also Trial Chamber Explorer maps, Ocean Explorer maps for ocean monuments, and depending on which biome the Cartographer villager is from, you can also get a Jungle or Swamp Explorer map, which will lead you to jungle pyramids or swamp huts. Now, to be fair, there are also specific maps for villagers of other biomes, but those maps only lead to villages of that specific biome, so I don't think it's all too important. Overall though, I would say the Cartographer is a pretty darn good endgame villager to help you explore the world around. Up next, let's talk about the Cleric, who you can get by putting down a brewing stand. And let me tell you, this man is great to make money. See, first of all, you can trade 3 gold ingots for 1 emerald. This is not really a good deal early on, but especially later on, if you get a good gold farm going, then you're gonna drown in gold, and that means infinite emeralds from the Cleric. However, what's even cooler is, especially earlier in the game, when you build your first mob spawner, then that usually means you get a whole bunch of rotten flesh. And as we all know, rotten flesh is completely freaking useless. However, if you have a Cleric, then you can sell 32 rotten flesh for 1 emerald. And while 32 might sound like quite a lot, there's really nothing else you can do with it, so rather than just throwing it away, the Cleric helps you turn it into something useful. As for the buying side of things, one cool thing here is that you can trade 1 emerald for 1 lapis lazuli, which isn't really all that worth it early on when you still have a lot of mines to explore, but especially later in the game, when you've scrapped everything clean in your vicinity, then having a refreshable source of lapis lazuli is definitely a good thing. Also, if you don't want to build an enderman farm to find the end portal, you can also always buy ender pearls for 5 emerald from the Cleric. And finally, the absolute kicker here is, once you get the Cleric up to Master, then you can buy a bottle of enchanting for 3 emeralds. This is a consumable bottle that will give you experience, which is not only great for enchanting, but also if you have equipment with mending on it, you could just pop one of those bottles and have it easily repaired. I think the Cleric is quite a valuable ally, albeit rather in the later portions of your world, not that much early on. Next, we would have the Farmer. And I think personally, the Farmer is the second best villager in the entire game because he has just absolutely amazing traits. First off, the Farmer is one of the best sources of making emeralds because you can sell wheat, potatoes, carrots, and beetroot to them in exchange for emeralds. Now, I don't think I need to explain here why this is great, right? These are all very, very easy to acquire in large quantities, especially beetroot, because that is usually something that you don't have all too much use for, meaning with a couple of farmers, your income is gonna be secured. As for what to buy from them, at master level, they have the absolutely amazing trade of getting 3 golden carrots for 3 emeralds, and golden carrots are basically the best food in the entire game. They give you a lot of saturation, and the only way to get them otherwise would be crafting them out of carrots and gold, but with the Farmer, not gonna be a problem. Just give him a couple emeralds and you are gonna drown in those golden carrots. Now, up next for the Fisherman, I'm gonna keep it a little bit short because the Fisherman is a little bit so-so. First of all, to get one, you only need to put down a barrel. And when it comes to trading, there's not all that much going on. One good thing here is that you can sell 20 strings for 1 emerald, which might be useful if you have some sort of spider farm going on. And also, from all the villagers that buy coal from you, the Fisherman is actually the one with the best deal, because here you only need to give 10 coal for an emerald. For the other ones, it's usually 15. However, when it comes to buying, there isn't really anything all that interesting besides the enchanted fishing rod. I think it's okay if you get one with good enchantments and you fish a lot to the point where you don't always want to enchant a new one after yours breaks. I think it's kind of okay to go for the Fisherman, but really I think he's one of the more weaker villagers. Let's now talk about the Fletchers, whom you can get by putting down a fletching table. Now, first of all, they have a very strong trait already at the novice level, and that is that you can give them 32 sticks in exchange for 1 emerald. This means you can effectively turn wood, which is one of the easiest resources to get in the entire game, directly into emeralds. And then once you get to higher levels, you can buy enchanted bows and enchanted crossbows from the Fletcher, which is always cool because you get enchantments for free, either turn them into experience with the grindstone or build upon them. However, the real kicker here is, on the master level, you can trade emeralds and normal arrows for any type of tipped arrows in the game. Which type of arrows they sell is of course random, so if you really want to have access to all different types of tipped arrows in the game, it's gonna take you a while to get enough Fletchers for that. But especially given how rare and difficult some of these potions are to get, and in the Java version, you need to beat the Ender Dragon to even be able to get tipped arrows in the first place, I think the Fletchers are actually really overpowered with this trade. Up next, we have the Leatherworker, who is, well, he's pretty garbage if I'm gonna be honest. See, in order to get him, you need to put down a cauldron. And when it comes to trading with him, there's really only one good trade here, and that would be at novice level, you can sell 6 leather in exchange for 1 emerald. This, I think, is a pretty good source of getting money early in the game because, as I said previously, having farms for the basic animals, cows, chickens, and so on, that's usually something we have early in the game. However, the entire rest of the inventory, leather armor, no thank you, we don't need that, we can craft that ourselves. The saddle, in the past, was pretty good, but now that's craftable too. And for the leather horse armor, well, maybe you could use it if you don't have any type of other horse armor just yet. But once you find something else, you will just instantly replace it and never go back. Okay, up next, let's talk about the single best villager type in the entire game, always has been and probably always will be, and that will be the Librarian. First of all, in order to get him, you need to put down a lectern. And naturally, when it comes to trading, they just have the most overpowered stuff in the game. First of all, just like with the Cartographer, you can sell paper for emeralds. That is very convenient. Then at master level, you can also buy name tags from them, which is very cool because name tags are important for a lot of farms in the game, and if you get unlucky, it is quite difficult to come by. However, I should say it was recently announced that in the next Minecraft update, name tags will become craftable, so at that point, having a name tag will be absolutely no issue anymore. For the time being though, Librarian's very good for that. But, of course, the main reason why we want to have a lot of Librarians would be the enchanted books that you can buy from them. See, for Librarians, they sell enchanted books already at their base level of Novice. And the cool thing here is, the type of enchantment that is on the book and also the enchantment level, all of this is random and equally likely. Meaning, you can just talk to a novice librarian and they might have one of the best enchantments in the game, like Mending, like Protection 4, like Unbreaking 3, all that good stuff, they might just have that right off the bat. And what's even better here, because the enchanted books are already available at novice level, you can just take a look at what they have, and if you don't like the type of enchantment, just destroy the lectern, turning them back into a normal villager, put it down again, and that will then re-roll the librarian's inventory, giving you different books. You can then just repeat that whole process until they have that very book that you want. Long story short, librarians are perfect, they're the most overpowered mob in the entire game probably, and you can never have enough of them. If you want to, you can have one of them for every single enchantment in the entire game. That's actually what a lot of players go for. Up next, let's talk about the Mason, who you can get by putting down a stonecutter. Now, one thing that the Mason is really good for, you can sell stone, granite, andesite, and diorite for emerald. In exchange for emeralds then, you can buy any type of terracotta, which is pretty cool if you want to design a fancy house, but more importantly, at the master level, the mason will sell pillars and blocks of quartz. That's super convenient because it means you can now use that nether quartz for other types of stuff like crafting different redstone elements, and you don't need to burn it on building blocks anymore. I think overall, having a couple of masons to turn your normal stone types into money is a good thing, and if you ever want to build an impressively big structure out of pure quartz, well then you better make sure to get a whole army worth of masons beforehand to trade with. Now, up next we have the shepherd, who you can get by placing down a loom, and if I'm being 100% honest, I'm not all too sure about him. See, the shepherd is all about trading different types of wool and dye. You, if you want to, can sell a bunch of white, brown, black, and gray wool for emeralds, or literally any type of dye in the game, and then in exchange you can buy any type of colored wool, beds, banners, and so on. If you don't have access to any type of dye, I think it's okay to go with it, but I feel like the numbers here in the deals are not really all that good. This right here would be the full list of trades that you can get out of him, so take a look at it and decide for yourself if there's anything that tickles your fancy or not. Now, one thing I should maybe say here is, if you have a good going iron farm, then you're probably going to get a lot of poppies as drops out of the iron golems, and those flowers can then be turned into red dye, meaning this is potentially a way to turn your shepherd into a good source of emeralds, but that's really the only thing I can think of right now. Alright, let's talk about the Toolsmith next, and let me tell you, bro is very darn good. If you want to get him, and you really should, then you need a smithing table for that. Now, just like the armorer, also with the Toolsmith, you can sell 4 iron ingots for an emerald. Very good if you have a big iron farm. However, the main reason why you would want to have the Toolsmith is because at the expert and master levels, you can get enchanted diamonds, shovels, and axes. Also here, the enchantments on the tools will be random. They will likely not be all that incredible, but also here, you can either turn that into experience via the grindstone and then enchant them yourself with whatever you like, or just use them anyway, because if you have a refreshable source of those enchanted tools, then it's also not all that bad if they just break. Only fun thing that I wanted to mention here is that yes, the Toolsmith also sells a diamond hoe, but for whatever reason, this is the only type of tool that he sells which will never be enchanted. So yeah, that's a fun fact on the side for you there. Overall though, I would say having a bunch of toolsmiths with all different types of enchantments, I think that is a pretty decent goal for a late game player. For the beginning though, having 1 or 2 is still very much worth it for the diamond gear. But whoever says Toolsmith naturally also has to say Weaponsmith. Let's talk about him. You get him by putting down a grindstone. And also here, just like with the other smiths, 4 iron ingots for an emerald is possible and very much encouraged. And just like with the Toolsmith, also here at the upper levels, you can get enchanted diamond gears in the form of an enchanted sword and axe. Video is pretty long already, meaning I'm gonna keep it short. Same thing that goes for the Toolsmith also goes here. It's very good, especially if your weaponsmith of choice happens to have good enchantments. And last but definitely not least, let's also talk about the Wandering Trader. To be fair, this dude is actually not considered a villager, but on the other hand, he looks like one and he behaves like one, so why don't we go over him too? Now, the Wandering Trader sells a whole bunch of things. Not all of it at once, of course, but a certain selection. Unfortunately, most of what this man sells is really not all that good. However, one thing I do want to mention, and I think this is actually a very good thing to have, the Wandering Trader sells all types of different tree saplings, meaning if you get unlucky with the biomes and you really want to have your cherry sapling in the desert or whatever, well, then he can make that happen. And especially the slime balls. If you find a Wandering Trader with the slime balls, that is very darn good, because as I also explained in my video on potions, you can just take a couple of slime balls, turn them into a potion of oozing, and then use that to spawn more slimes, get more slime balls out of those, to turn that into an infinite slime farm. This is very convenient because you don't need to go out and search for a chunk where slimes can spawn and all that. Just take a couple slime balls, brew them into a potion, and then you're set. And if you also want to have the easiest villager breeder or trade hall, then check out one of these guides next because I already talked about that in great detail. See you next time, and until then, craft well.